In this lesson, you will learn how to create and structure attributes in the test case design section of Tricentis Tosca. Let's start with a recap of some of the theory you covered in the Automation Specialist Level 2 course. The test case design section of Tosca is where you specify and design the test cases you will later want to build in the test case section. Test sheets are the highest level components of the test case design section, and it is within these test sheets that you organize your test data and logical test structure. Each requirement of your application should be covered by a test sheet, and the relevant test cases required to test this requirement will be designed within this test sheet. The functionality of your application depends on the behavior of various business objects. The interaction with these business objects in your physical test cases should be mapped in test sheets using attributes. Attributes are the various characteristics of the application or representations of these business objects. An example of an attribute in our sample application would be a credit card drop-down list. We would then add the variations of this attribute later as instances. For example, the types of credit cards we can choose from. For example, Visa, MasterCard, and so on. We will discuss instances in the next lesson, so for now we're going to stick to attributes. Attributes can be structured like requirements. Every attribute can have sub-attributes depending on how you have chosen to design the test sheet. Each attribute has a defined attribute type property, which can have the value either logical or physical. This is not user-defined, but actually defined by Tosca. This means simply whether an attribute has sub-attributes, logical, or not, physical. We recommend creating 4 logical attributes in every test sheet for structure. These attributes are administration, precondition, process, and verification. The administration attribute will contain information about the test cases that will not contain actual test data, but may contain information that is relevant to someone who is reading the test sheet. For example, who designed the test case, who is the contact person for the data, what is the test stage, or any other additional comments. The precondition attribute will contain prerequisites for your test case. That means data which is required to set up the workspace or application in the right configuration for the test case, but is not the actual focus of the test case. For example, data for logging into an application. The process attribute will contain all of the data that will be tested in these test cases. This information is both relevant for the test case to run and relates directly to the focus of the test case. Finally, the verification attribute is where you should specify all data used for verifications or comparisons to test whether the process steps have functioned as expected. Each attribute also has the property business relevant, and this property can be set by the user. There are 3 possible values that can be selected for this property, either yes, no, or result. Yes is the default value. This means that an attribute is business relevant, meaning it will affect the test case and should be considered when deciding which combinations of data to use to create the test cases. This could be used for the precondition and process attributes. All sub-attributes of these attributes will adopt the selected business relevance. No means that the attribute specified and its sub-attributes are not relevant to the test case being built and should not be considered when combining data. This could be chosen for the administration attribute. Result indicates that the attribute selected and its sub-attributes contain data that will be used for verification in the test cases. This could be selected for the verification attribute. To set all of this up in Tosca, you will go to the test case design or the red section. Create structural folders which will contain the test sheets relevant to your project. Best practice is to set up the folder structure in this section to reflect the structure of your requirements section. This will not be the case in our current workspace due to training purposes. On the test case design folder, which should contain your test sheet, you have 3 ways to add a test sheet. In the ribbon, you can select Create Object. test sheet. You can also right-click on the folder and select Create Test Sheet from the mini toolbar, or finally, you can use the shortcut Ctrl-N, Ctrl-T. To add attributes to a test sheet, you have the same three options. Select Create Object, Attribute from the ribbon, right-click and select Create Attribute, or use the shortcut Ctrl-N, Ctrl-A. On the Properties tab of the attribute itself, you can select from the drop-down box whether you want the attribute to have business relevance yes, no, or result. With the attribute selected, this can also be toggled using Ctrl F7 or using the button in the ribbon. You will see the color of the attribute changing to reflect this change.